distance is massive. Where I'm going to day tickets, it's becoming more and more popular. People are casting out, and naturally the fish are just they're moving out into the middle of the pond. If you can't cast there, you are going to catch, but you want to have that advantage on the angler next door to you. And if you can go an extra 10 yards casting, yeah, you soon start catching a few carp. I'd say 95% of my fishing's day tickets. I just absolutely love it, catching as many carp as you can, getting to meet new people on the bank, just sort of flitting around day tickets. That's my go-to one. Be on a spot, put a bit of bait in and try and get a spot established, get them grubbing around, that sort of thing. I'm not sort of one of them people who likes fishing small, intimate little ponds. Don't get me wrong, I enjoy it, but I'd much rather be trying to work it out in the middle of the pond rather than under the rod tip. Gonna put 2 on day rigs and 1 on a Ronnie. Can't find my hook beads anywhere, but to be fair, it's fairly clean out there, so. Yeah. Pink Ronnie, match the hatch, a little snowman. That is a bite indeed, Bradders. Straight on the telegraph pole, wallop. Get the other 2 rods out. With anything, practice makes perfect. I mean, day tickets now, I've fished places like Linear for 7-8 years, and I'd like to think I'm better than I was 7-8 years ago, and that is just by going down week in, week out. I've cracked off many a times, I've fracked up many a times, I've made plenty of mistakes, but by sort of learning from your mistakes, it does make you better. I've watched plenty of videos on YouTube, I've had a couple of casting tutorials with people like Jermaine. Fair enough, you need the equipment, don't get me wrong, you're not going to be able to take a 2-pound test curve rod down to a 50-acre lake and cast out in the middle. You do need the gear, but yeah, technique and more so practice in time. It sort of all comes together to produce a super cast. First of all, when I'm lining up for the cast, a lot of people say point your feet to where you're fishing, and I do that, but with my hips, rather than pointing it at the spot, I'll actually point it 90 degrees in the opposite direction. And when I actually do the cast, I'll be rotating my hips, and that just helps pick up the momentum of the lead.
So because I'm quite a heavy guy, I like to make sure I use my body weight to my advantage as well. So that would include stepping through into the cast, you know, getting all my body movement going forward throughout that rod. I like to set up so I can abuse my power a bit more. That's why I have my right arm's a lot more bent than most people would be. But again, I'm punching through, I'm pushing through with my body, and I'm finishing the rod quite close to my left-hand hip.
When you're casting, for me, speed is everything. I'm not the strongest of people. People like Jermaine, they're a lot stronger, they can compress the rod much quicker. For me, I find that I get my distance from speed, so rotating the hips does help with the speed, but more so hand speed. With my left hand, I'm slamming it into my chest as hard as possible. With my right hand, I'm punching it as hard as possible.
You know, you're doing that, but all you're doing is pulling here, whereas if you're coming here, you're able to push and pull at the same time. You don't want to be too stiff going into the cast. So I like to have nice, slightly bent arms, relaxed body, nice step into it, and use all your body and power to explode into the cast.
So yeah, tip speed, make sure to rotate your hips, and the other one is weight transfer. I'm not the heaviest of people, but even just stepping from your right leg, putting all the weight onto your left as you pull that rod into your chest, that certainly helps you compress the rod and get that rod flying out into the middle. Like I said, everyone's technique is different. My technique might work for some, it might not for others. It's just all about getting out there and practicing. That technique for me, rotating the hips, slamming it into the chest, and most importantly, transferring the weight from the right to the left leg. That's the way I do it. Weather's massive. Whenever I go fishing, whether I'm fishing out in the middle, whether I'm fishing smaller, intimate venues, always check the weather, see what the conditions are doing.
I'm also mindful of the weather coming in the next couple of days. We should be having a crosswind of about 30 miles an hour, so I don't want to fish too far where I'm not going to be able to get my hook baits out and bait out in the future.
The last thing I want is to be fishing at a range over 100 yards, a big 50-60 mile per hour crosswind comes in, because it's going to make your line lay horrendous, and also just the baiting up and accuracy, it's just completely out the window.
Yeah, you have to. It's very paramount to check that. Fishing long range, or even if you're planning on fishing shorter ranges, you know, fish follow the wind and whatnot.
Wind is blowing down here, isn't it? Yeah, this is the final guy, isn't it? Don't know whose car that is though. Have the car followed it? That's the question. The bailiff said to follow the wind, and I mean the wind's blowing down here, so there's no reason they wouldn't be here. There's not many people down here. Down the other end it's a little bit busy, so it might push a few fish up here. Haven't seen anything yet, but I can smell the carp in the air. Come on, jump.
You've got to trust your equipment. That is a big factor. I know a lot of people go out and spend money on rods and the last thing they want to do is break it. But you've got to have trust that your rod has been tested previously in production and it's going to do what you want it to do. So don't be scared to hit it.
So your fishing rod, it's the tool that you're using to get the lead or spod out into the middle, and the sort of three main key factors to me that makes a rod just that little bit more special and that I'm looking for when it comes to fishing out in the middle. The first one is the weight of the rod. I feel like when you've got a light rod in your hands, you can move that rod much quicker through the air, and that's the reason I love the F40s. So the second thing that I look for is recovery. The recovery of the rod is basically when you let go of the rod getting back into its natural state, being nice and straight, and that's just going to reduce friction on the cast. Again, the F40s and the F20s, they recover super quick, which certainly helps you add extra yards onto the cast. And the final one, quite a simple one really, is a 50mm butt ring. Again, just helps reduce friction and adds that extra distance onto the cast. Whenever I'm fishing over 100 yards, the weight that I'm normally picking is a distance lead, either a 4, 4.5 or even 5 ounce. It sort of depends really on the hook bait size. Obviously, when you're using a large hook bait, there's more air resistant, so I'll probably put a 5 ounce lead on there. It just sort of helps carry the rig out to the spot. You want it to have that momentum and speed, but also the weight to carry itself. It's all down to personal preference, but yeah, you want to be sort of looking at certainly a distant shaped lead to help with the aerodynamics, but sort of that 4 to 5 ounce bracket is where I'd be looking.
What time is that northerly coming in?
I think this is it now, is it?
Have a look. 35 mile an hour.
35. We'll be blowing then. There's a suspicious looking grebe. Oh, there was one.
Yeah.
Yeah, right behind the suspicious looking grebe. I told you he was looking a bit sus. Big chuck that, isn't it? Interesting. I reckon from here to them reeds, it's 150.91 yards. It's about 146. There was one. Up against them far reeds again. Like I mentioned with technique, your hip movement that adds a little percentage, transferring the weight adds another percentage, and it's sort of all these little percentages that some people might forget about. It all comes together to make that full 100%. If you mess up on the mainline choice, even with the correct technique, the correct hardware, you're going to reduce your distance. Even with the correct tackle, without the technique, it's going to reduce distance. So yeah, putting all these little things, the correct lead size, correct technique, putting it all together to create that big cast that you've always dreamed of.